Is my screen visible and I'm audible to everyone? Okay. So let's start with question number 62, which says that, so this is question number 62. And the question says that, what is the total power per unit area available in wind stream blowing at a speed of 5 meter per second? Right. So they are asking per unit area. So you know that the wind speed, so wind stream power. So power in the wind stream is half KCP AV cube. AV cube. Sorry. Okay, but the problem here is here is not given an efficiency. So efficiency, if they have not given the value of the KCP or maximum power coefficient, we will take it as 100. So this term will go from here. This term will be removed. Then they are asking total power per unit area. So if they are asking total power per unit area, so it should be power per unit area. So this A will get on the left hand side. So this will also go from here. Okay. So this rho will remain here, which is the density. Rho also was there. So it will be only half rho V cube, which we have to calculate. Right. So just we have to put up into the formula. Why I told you na, why we are not using KCP. KCP we are not using because first they have not asked about the efficiency. It means that is 100%. 100% means 1. 100% means 1. Simple. Right. 100% means 1. Right. And even if they have not discussed, so they have not discussed, then there is no utility of the KCP. Right. So then just put up in the formula the data. So you can see here. So as I told you, so power per unit area, we have to half rho AV cube it will become, and we will put up the values, and it will come out to be 76.62 watt per meter square. Right. So it will be 76.62 watt per meter square, which is the final answer. So it's a very simple question. Just put up the values and get the answer. You have to be just good enough in reading the question that they are asking power per unit area, plus they are not discuss about the KCP. So 76.6 watt per meter square is the correct answer, and which is the option number 1. Is it clear to everyone? Question number 62. All the participants are clear. Anyone having any doubt about this? Question number 62. Anyone, any doubt? Clear. Okay, now let's move to the next question. Now let's move to the question number 63. So it's a very good question. And it's a very simple question. So it's a Ederson Lesion question, and it says that most of the world's geothermal sites are located in the circum-Pacific belt known as Rim of Fire. This is absolutely true. Due to the experimental evidences, we have come to know that the most of the world's geothermal sites, or the where we can harness the geothermal energy, they are concentrated are located in the circum-Pacific belt of the Rim of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. So this statement is true, right? This statement is true. Then geothermal fields require combination of three geological conditions: a natural underground source of water, an impermeable rock that traps the water and allow formation of steam, and a large mass of hot rock in the vicinity of water system. Yes, these are required, but just because these are required, that's why in the Rim of Fire not all the locations are there. So both the statement are true, but they are not explaining each other. So second would be the correct answer. Both A and R is true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. So that's why we will take second as the correct answer, because both the statement individually as true, but they are not explaining it. We can see here the the geothermal field, how they work out. You can see that most of them are Pacific Ring of Fire. Here it has been shown, right? Anyone, any doubt in this? Anyone, any doubt in question number 63? Any participant? So you can see there that they have shown that how it is there. Yes, yes, it is same. It is same. Okay. Now let's move to the question number 64. It's a very simple question, have been repeatedly or like multiple number of times this question have been asked. Question number 64, right? So the question says that which among the following is the correct order of steps taken during the process of environmental impact assessment, right? So first of all, we have screening, followed by scoping, followed by EIA, public hearing, issues of environmental clearance, right? So screening, scoping, EIA, public hearing, issue of environmental clearance, these are the orders and the steps. These are the orders or the steps of the EIA, correct order. So third is the correct answer for 64. We can see the flow chart also if it is, yeah. So you can see here screening, scoping, right? Screening, scoping, then all the steps in EIA have been given: screening, then scoping, then EIA, then public hearing, etc. Right? So this is the order. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in question number 64? All the participants? Any doubt? Clear. Let's move to the question number 65. So it's also a microbiology basically related question, environmental microbiology related question. So it says which group of the microorganisms dominate in glacial ecosystem. So now let's see. First of all, we will see different varieties of these microbes. What are psychrophiles, thermophiles, mesophiles, and acidophiles according to their names. So psychrophiles, as you know, psychrophiles or cryophiles are extremophile organisms that are capable of growth and production at low temperature ranging from -20 to +10. So they are found in places of the permanent cold such as polar regions and the deep sea, right? And they can be contrasted with thermophiles, which are organisms that live in unusually high temperature. So thermophile at high temperature, psychrophile at cold living or the low temperature, right? So that we have to remember. Then after that, we have psychrophiles, as I told you, and low temperature. Then we have thermophile at high temperature, right? Then we have simple thermophile, extreme, hyperthermophile, then mesophils, in between condition ranging from 20 to 45. Then we have acidophils, which usually pH less than 2. So acidophiles, they live at pH less than 2. So now this question will become very simple for us, and we can easily omit out other choices and can choose our correct answer. So which of the group of microorganisms dominate in glacial ecosystem? So glacial ecosystem is ultra low temperature. So psychrophiles, or cold living organisms. First is the correct answer as shown, has been asked. Is it clear to everyone? 65, the correct answer is 1. Anyone having any doubt in this question? All the participants? Yeah, 65 is first. Anyone having any doubt in this? Anyone? Okay, now let's move to the next question. Now let's move to the next question, which is itself a very simple question. Just have to match list 1 and list 2 containing the year of the enactment. So question number 66. Right. So all of you know that Environmental Protection Act, which is EPA, right, 1986. So it will go to third. Then we have Forest Conservation Act 1980. It will go to 1. Then we have Water Prevention Control of Pollution Act 1974. Right, and then Air Control and Prevention of Pollution Act 1981. So you can match it like this, right? So according to the correct matches, the question goes like the second choice is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt? So it's very simple. Environmental Protection Act is 1986 and Forest Conservation Act 1980 was enacted in 1980. Then Control and Prevention of Pollution Act 1974, and then Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Is it like a very simple question? And it's a repeated question multiple times when asked. Anyone having any issue in this question? Any participants, any issue? Clear. Okay. Now let's move to the next question, 67. All the details have been given, what is what. Yeah, it's a very simple question. Question number 67 is a very simple question. It's a 11th and 12th class thermodynamics question. Right. So it's basically nothing. It's just the first law of thermodynamics, that energy can neither be created nor it can be destroyed. It can only be transformed into one form to another form. It's basically the mathematical expression. Just a minute, guys. Okay, so this question is a very simple question and can be done with the help of 11th and 12th class thermodynamics knowledge. So which of the following is true in context with enthalpy, internal energy, and pressure and volume in the thermodynamics? So let me tell you one thing, that the enthalpy which you denote by H, right, it is basically heat change at constant pressure. Internal energy, some people denote it with U, some denoted it with E. It heat change at constant volume. Then we have pressure and volume, and you know that H is equal to U plus W, and some people also write it at delta H is equal to delta E plus P delta V. Right, this is also in an, or a PV we can write it. Some people write it as U. So according to this, and W can be written as PV, pressure volume work done. So according to this, the second is the correct option, right? Second is the correct option. So here we can take second is the correct option. So we can see the explanation. Yeah, so it is here. Delta H is equal to U plus P delta V. And the characteristics wise, I told you that enthalpy is heat exchange at constant pressure, internal energy heat exchange at constant volume. So 67 second is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt? Any participant, any doubt in this? Question number 67. Any doubt? Clear. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. Yeah. So question number 68, which belongs to statistics, right? Which is one of the important domain of the exam and have been well taught to you guys. And so it says that in an objective type examination, there are 100 questions. 1 mark is awarded for each correct answer, and 0.125 marks are deducted for each incorrect answer. The number of marks scored by the student in the examination, example of which of the following types of variables. So first, let's see some of the theory. Then it will be easy for us to choose it. How? So let's understand what is a discrete variable. So discrete variable are countable in a finite amount of time. For example, you can count the change in your pocket. You can count the money in your bank account, and you can also count the amount of money in everyone's bank account. It might take you a long time to count the last items, but the point is it is still countable. Like you can count these things, finite and countable, right? Then in continuous variables, we have like forever to count. In fact, you would get to forever and never finish, like end on going on, going on, going on. For example, take age. You can't count age. Why not? Because it would literally take forever. For example, you could be 25 years, 10 months to age 5 hours, 4 seconds, 4 millisecond, nanosecond, 99 picosecond, and so on. So it's a sort of infinite task. So if I see these definitions, so I will definitely go for discrete, because here whatever marks a student will be getting in this, I can easily count it them, right? Because I have to give out of 100 marks, and for each of the correct answer, 1 marks will be given and 0.125 marks is deducted. So they are sort of the finite. So discrete is the correct answer. So it's an example of the discrete variable. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt? Any participant having any doubt in question number 68? Anyone having any doubt in this? Clear. Okay. Now let's move to the question number 69, which is again a mass balance question, and have been repeated multiple number of times, right? At least multiple number of times it have been repeated. So first let's see the question number 69. It says that two streams A and B are flowing with a flow rate of this much and this much. The concentration of pollutant X into two stream are this much and this much. The two streams join each other, and assume that complete mixing of the stream occur after joining the pollutant, and it's a conservative substance. The downstream concentration of the pollutant after joining the two stream would be. So because the pollutant is conservative in nature and they are well mixed, so we can do easily this with the help of mass balance. So let's assume some of the things like which is given in the question, like Q1. Let us suppose the initial flow rate of the first stream, which we marked as A, stream E, and the flow here is 20 cubic meter per second, and the concentration, initial concentration of chloride in the first stream was 50 mg per liter. Then for stream B, we can say that QB, initial flow rate of 5 cubic meter per second, And then you can see that Cb, which is the initial concentration of chloride in the second stream, 50 mg per liter. Now this simply you have to apply. And Cf is the final concentration, Q final is the final flow rate. So just simply apply Cf QF is equal to C1 Q1 plus C2 Q2, and Cf we have to calculate. So we will surely going to apply C1 Q1 plus C2 Q2 divided by QF, and Q final, that is flow final, is QA plus QB. And we will put the values, and finally we will get the answer in this, and the answer will come out to be 22 mg per liter. Hope it is clear to everyone. It's a very easy question. Like, you can easily calculate it. Anyone having any doubt in this question? It's 22 mg per liter. Anyone having any doubt in this question number 69? Right. No doubt. So now we can see that one of the option, yes, it is here. The fourth is the correct option for question number 69, which is 22 mg per liter, as we see that how to solve this question. Right. Now let's move to the question number 70, which is another important question. Right. So consider the following wavelength. It says that the question says that it is consider the following wavelength. Water vapor absorbs strongly at which of the above wavelength? See, the thing is all the wavelengths which are given. So let me first ask you the 400 to 700 nanometer range is PAR, right? And all which is more than 700 nanometer are IR or more than 0.7 micrometer. So everyone here is more than 0.7 micrometer, and water strongly absorb in IR, right? So all A, B, C, D, everything, because water strongly absorb in IR. Water vapor, right? Water vapor strongly absorbed in IR. So everyone will be a part of it. So fourth is the correct answer. It's a very easy question. Fourth is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? Fourth is the correct answer. Yeah. Okay. Hope no one is having any doubt in question number 70. Anyone having any doubt in question number 70? Any candidate? Clear. And we can see some justification for this. Like you can see here, the absorption of electromagnetic radiation water depends on the state of the water. And most of the time, all these wavelengths, right? Most of these bands you can see here, they are in IR. And these are like everything have been shown, like 0.75 to 1.4. So 0.75 to 1.4. So you can see 1.4, it is here A, B, C, everything. And then next one is 1.88, also one band, right? Here you can see. So one band is here. So almost all the bands which are given, water absorption have been significantly shown to increase. So that's why fourth is the correct answer. Water vapor generally show absorption in all these bands. A, B, C, D. So fourth is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt in this? No need to remember it micrometer. Micrometer just thousands say you can divide, no? Just remember in nanometer, yeah. Just can convert on the spot. Right. So with this, we will stop here, and we will continue our discussion in the next class. Right. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.